And like, why would a holy God allow sin to exist and continue? Right? So that's where I wanted to go today. And I found it also important to kind of point out like why I think this is important. Right? The reason why I feel this so strongly about this is because without a clear understanding, really, of what sin is, we would distort the doctrine of justification. We would confuse why Christ had to die. We would misunderstand what happens in a conversion, or for that matter, in a baptism. Right? We would disregard repentance, and we would never truly be able to grasp what exactly it stands for. Right? For that matter, on a personal note, I worry that I would not have the right kind of love and gratitude towards Jesus who died to save me from that sin, which I don't understand fully. And so that's why this is so critical. Like our faith and our salvation and our entire belief system rests on a proper understanding, I think, of what sin is. So with that said, let's just dive right into it. Next slide, please. I wanted to start off with an example, like a really, really like bad man, right? And that's him right there. And his name, Fritz Haber. This is a genuine mad scientist, like an evil mad scientist. Let me just start off from there. He was a German scientist back in the 1900s, the early 1900s. And just to paint the picture for you, around the early 1900s, Germany, and take it away, the ground now has less nutrient. If you keep growing plants, like you're going to suck the ground dry eventually, unless you replenish the nutrient in the soil. And that's the problem. We running out. Like just the population at that point hit about 1 billion people worldwide. And we were starting to run out of available fertilizer to grow more crops to feed everybody. Until this brilliant man came along. Haber figured out how to basically create fertilizer from just the nitrogen in the air, right? And that process basically allowed like most of us to exist. If you look around the room, 6 out of 7 people are eating bread grown from his process. That's pretty impressive. If you kind of stop and just consider like how the room would be 1/7 the size this very moment if not for this man's like progress and his invention. And for this work, he earned the 1918 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Pretty big deal. Okay. Except World War I then rolled around. And Haber is, above all else, a staunch patriot. He believed in Germany and the German cause. And so he did everything he could as a scientist to help his country, the Fatherland. This involved basically taking the same process for making fertilizer and making bombs and explosives from the process. This involves inventing chemical warfare. He was the first one to invent modern chemical warfare, where if we stood downwind from the enemy troops, he trained troops to release chlorine gas that would float down the wind and choke and kill and maim the enemy soldiers. Okay, while his soldiers wore gas masks, would go in and finish off the job. Right. Just to like push it even further, he was also the man who invented the chemical that was used later on by the Nazis to execute Jewish prisoners of war in the gas chambers. So he kind of destitute and just kind of a very, very sad old man. So that's his story. Now, imagine for a second, if you would, that you are a high school student and your chemistry teacher just told you this story and asked you, is this man a good man or an evil man? You know, what would you say? Right? I mean, on the one hand, like there's all that atrocity that he did in the war. Like he contributed to the deaths of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, right? On the other hand, without his invention, I mean, we wouldn't be here. Like, but if you just do the math, right? Killed millions, fed billions. How does that add up? And the reason why I wanted to start with the story is because this is us. This is a picture of us, right? This is a picture of us when we think of ourselves, when we try to decide, am I basically a good man? Or am I basically a good woman? Or a bad man, bad woman? Like, what am I exactly?